First things first, welcome to CNN. I'm Kirk Kennedy, the underdog. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. I was going to make a video today, another video, on the occult among us. The occult being essentially like witchcraft and worship of Satan and so forth. I was going to make a video on that today and talk about specifically, I want to give you biblical reasons why like Satan, demons and stuff hate us, hate human beings. But today I want to give a different story, another story that's dark, but also has light at sort of the end of the tunnel, so to speak. A friend of mine, so the other day I had some guys over. We were watching, Thursday night, we were watching football. It was opening day football. And as we were watching the game, I had a couple guys over from my church. We were hanging out. And I forgot why we got into this conversation. But I was explaining to them a little bit about my life prior to being a believer and some of the stuff I'd gone through. And my story has to do with like murder, prison, all of this stuff. But I started talking about another guy who was even more dangerous than me. And his name was Rodney. And today, one of my closest buddies sent me an article about Rodney today. And it just brought back a flood of memories and some things. So I wanted to talk about this. I don't usually share this type of content on this channel. So I don't know how many people will resonate with this. But let me tell you a little bit of story about, and this has to do with my background, why I am the way I am. There's murder, prison, drugs, guns, all of it. Now, typically, you know, you're kind of used to the story of people, black people being from the hood or being ghetto and just having to grew up without a dad and all of that stuff. I'll save you. That's all true for me, but I'll save you that. But I want to talk about the power of evil and darkness. So when I was a kid, I grew up in the streets, tough neighborhood. My mom eventually moved us away to the suburbs so I could go to back then we called it junior high school. So I moved away to junior high school and high school into a county called Montgomery County, specifically an area called Gaithersburg, Maryland. And in that place, I, worked on my rapping skills, played basketball. I wanted to get a scholarship. I kind of moved away from the criminal element. As a kid, I'd been arrested for breaking and entering and I was just doing a lot of stuff. And I remember, I think I was probably 11 and the local police department told my mom, if you don't get him out of here, he'll be dead or in prison by the time that he's 18. And so my mom was afraid. They wanted to put me in a scared straight program, one of them type of things where you go visit the prison and for some reason, the day I was supposed to go, I forgot something happened, it fell through. Well, my mom eventually got a break. The Lord was kind. At the time, I didn't feel this way because I was moving away from my friends and everything I'd known and leaving an all black neighborhood and black community to a relatively white one in the suburbs. So I go there. I've always been funny, always been popular. At every school I've ever been in, I was always one of, if not the most popular person, most likely to be famous, all those types of things. Well, I go through grade school, middle school, high school, and I didn't get a scholarship and I graduated. And I didn't want to go to JUCO. Like I should have went to JUCO and played basketball for what would have been called Montgomery. There were couple Montgomery College campuses. There are three in my area. One in Tacoma Park, one in Rockville, and one in Germantown. Well, the Rockville campus had a coach that had a reputation for getting guys scholarships. But the Germantown one, I was sure to be a star. I think starter if I had gone there, but I just didn't. I really graduated, and I missed to be honest with you, I missed the camaraderie I felt growing up. I missed that sense of community from the hood, and I also wanted to get a record deal. So when I graduated high school, I started to take rapping much more seriously. But around that time, rap music had changed. It was nothing like, so there was a long period of time where rap music was a lot of like, if you grew up in the 80s, it was a lot of like, I'm the better rapper than you, sucker MCs, this and that. And then around, and then they had this like black, like Public Enemy and X-Clan and this sort of black people, poor righteous teachers, this Nation of Islam, kind of the black man is God sort of came into hip hop. And that was a thing for a few years. And then right around 93, when Wu-Tang Clan came out, a different wave had happened in East Coast rap. I was an East Coast guy, even though the West Coast had already had like gangster rap with NWA and Ice-T and other people. So then you get Snoop Dogg and Dre are coming out with the Chronic. And so West Coast and then Tupac obviously was solidified. But East Coast, there was still a lot of it that was connected to like being a better rapper, having fun. You had Tribe Called Quest, Phife Dawg. Now here's a funky introduction of how nice I am. So tell your mother, there was a lot of that. But then in 93, Wu-Tang Clan came out, and they brought a measure of grit and grime to East Coast rap. And then in 94, you had Nas drop Illmatic. And then and then Biggie in 95. And so there was this shift in rap where it went from you got to be a cool, clever rapper to basically you got to be a street dude. You got to be a thug. And I had gone to school in the suburbs and I wasn't that. But I wanted a record deal, and I knew that in order for me to get taken seriously, I couldn't be like, hey, I was a rapper, I was a class clown, I was dating white girls in high school. I had to get back to the streets. And so when I graduated high school, I went back to the hood, but I went back with a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove because I didn't want them to think I was soft. Now, let me make this clear. I didn't have to go back to the streets. My mom had moved us away from that. But I missed the camaraderie and I wanted the credibility. I wanted to me, and this is where the enemy has really fooled a lot of black people. We thought that being street and gangster, there was something authentic about that there was a part of being black and blackness. And now that rap music has taken on this role, it started with this phrase, keep it real, keeping it real, packing steel, getting high. Like it was just this sentiment that like, if you're going to be taken seriously, and you're black, you got to be a street dude. And I believed this lie. And I pursued it wholeheartedly. So when I went back to the hood, I went back like ready to jump in. I jumped into the drug game. I started selling weed. And then after that, I started selling crack. And then once you start selling crack, and now you're dealing with a different kind of money. Now you're dealing with thousands of dollars and so forth, as opposed to hundreds with the kind of weed I was selling. Obviously, people, if you're selling pounds, you can make a lot of money in weed. But I started selling crack and my life got dangerous and dark very, very quickly. But it didn't seem that way to me because at the time I wanted the credibility. I wanted a record deal desperately. And I wanted the credibility of being, what rap was talking about. I didn't want to be the dude that someone could say, man, that dude went to this high school and was dating white girls and was all cracking jokes. He ain't no gangster. I didn't want that. So I decided I'm going to jump in head first. And it was some of the worst decisions that I made. So I go back into the streets and I'm pursuing, I'm hooked up with this hood, Belhaven. And it was like we had two different dreams. They were into the crack game and I was into the rap game. And it was like we merged together. And all of a sudden, I have now the backing of one of the most notorious neighborhoods in the DC metropolitan area's history in Landover, Maryland, Belhaven. And I got their credibility. So I taught them how to rap. They taught me the crack game. One of my closest homies, it was my dude, Southeast dude, DC. He was locked up. And so he was gone during this period of time. He got out. I call him Buzz, my man Butt. To this day, he's like my barber. He gives me my shape up, cuts my kids' hair. He doesn't do my dreads. Somebody else does that. But at this time, I really invested wholeheartedly in this underworld of murder, drugs, guns, prison. Like I went full force because I wanted to prove I wasn't soft. And that's the power of evil. Like even when you think like I ain't afraid of nobody, I don't care what nobody thinks. The fact that you want people to know that proves you care about what people think. So I got sucked into this dark world, and it wasn't dark at the time. It was just, it became normal to me. It was normal to be at the Haven outside getting high and hear gunshots and then find out somebody got murdered. it became somewhat normal. Sadly, it became something that we didn't care about and at times even laughed about, as we knew people who got murdered. And I knew enough about the Lord then to know that like that person ain't make it. They probably burning in hell. But life goes on. You always think it's not going to be you. So I lived like this for a few years, and it was just a crazy time. And then one day, my man Butt, the guy I was talking about, he got into a conflict with these guys in the neighborhood, and they tried to jump him. He got away. He called me. He had my gun. We go back to the neighborhood. We're arguing with them. I pull out my gun, and I just start shooting. And about 2 weeks later, this is how crazy I was. I was so crazy. I was so gone that when I shot at them, I didn't even care. So much so that 2 weeks later, I'm playing basketball right across the street from their neighborhood where I just shot at these dudes. Right, I didn't even care. And all of a sudden, when I'm playing, and my back was to the, like where you come onto the basketball court, the main road. And my man was like, hey, turn around, turn around. So I turn around and look, I see 6 guys running at me full speed, 5 of them with baseball bats. And they're yelling, we got you, we get ready. And I knew that if they hit me once, that was it. I knew that I just shot at these dudes 2 weeks earlier, and these dudes were going to kill me. I knew it in the moment. There was ain't no, as much as I like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and Bloodsport, it wasn't no blocking this and doing, I was going to die. So I took off running across this big soccer field, and the Lord just gave me, these dudes were such weed smokers that I ran so fast that by the time I turned around again and looked, they were so far behind me, I stopped running. But I was enraged that they had tried to kill me, completely forgetting that I shot at them 2 weeks earlier. I go to my man's house. We come up there with weapons. Everyone's gone from the basketball court. We link back up together, and we go back to this neighborhood to really take these guys out. I put together a plan, and the plan was flawless, except for one thing, which now I'm eternally grateful that this happened. I gave my buddy the gun and told him take it off safety, and he didn't. So when we were set up, he jumped out to shoot the gun, and I was far away, talking to the guys, arguing with them, making them focus on me straight ahead, not knowing my peoples were right here. I saw my friend jump, and I saw sparks come out, and I thought we got him, we shot him. And in that moment, this is how gone I was. I was running around the side laughing at the fact that we just murdered someone. I was laughing. I turn the corner and I hear my friend call my name. I look over at him and he got shot. And he's saying, I'm hit. And so I call my other friend, Butt, to come back. We run, grab my man. We put him in the car and take him to the hospital. He's bleeding to death in the back of the car. And I'm saying to him, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And I said, hey, where's the gun? Where's the gun that I gave you? And he was like, I dropped it. And I knew once he said that what was going to happen. I was like, feds are going to pick that gun up. They're going to find it. They're going to connect the dots that gun was was used 2 weeks earlier. They're going to connect the dots to who was in both places. And that's exactly what happened. I was charged with felony assault, first degree, second degree, possession of a gun, reckless endangerment. They said the gun was stolen, theft over 300, and I was facing 43 years in prison. My life was over. And my next door neighbor at the time, he was a lawyer, but just kind of new. And so we told him what happened, and he recommended a lady. I'll never forget her name, Sylvia Doyle. And he said she was a panel attorney. I didn't know what that meant. But I ended up contacting her. She was willing to take my case. I didn't have money at the time. At that time, I had stopped selling crack and all the drugs, and I was broke. I'd gone years I was spending money like crazy, making money. But at this point, I was broke. I just didn't have it. So she agreed to be my lawyer, and I'll never forget, we were in court, and she told me, listen, you're probably going to do about 10 years. That's the best I think I can do for you. And I remember having this look on my face and her almost being like, you're not happy about that? And I was like, 10 years in prison is like 100 years. It's like time slows down when you're in prison, when you're locked up. And I was like, I mean, I'm talking about seconds are like days in that thing. And I just thought, wow, 10 years. Long story short with that, the judge really blasted the prosecution because they tried to say that I shot my friend by accident in the shootout. The Lord sent me a guy who was fresh out of, this must have been his first case. He was the oafiest dude I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it. And the judge was like, how dare you come in my courtroom unprepared? I couldn't believe it. So the judge dropped all the felony charges. I pled guilty to 2 reckless endangerment, possession of a gun. I was sentenced to 20 months and he suspended all of it. And I ended up doing less than 60 days. I couldn't believe it. I knew then it was the Lord, even though I didn't know enough to be like, how do I become so I went in, came out, and I knew that, you know what? I'm done with the streets. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done with the streets. So I come out and a buddy of mine I went to play basketball with in high school. He had moved back he went to grad school. His life took a different turn. He went to grad school, graduated down to Miami. He didn't go to Miami, but the school was in Miami. He comes back. He's going to this mega church in our area, and it was predominantly white. And he was like, bro, you got to come. And I was like, I'm not trying to go to no white church. So anyway, I go to this church and visit it, and I was like, And then I went to this conference that they held. Actually, Josh Harris, who you've heard me talk about before, who wrote I Kissed Dating Goodbye, he was he led a conference called New Attitude. And he used to meet like in Baltimore, Philadelphia, and then Louisville, Kentucky. So I went to the one in Baltimore. It was this would have been 2000. I went to that conference, and that conference changed me. And it was and what changed me was I was surrounded around thousands of white people. I was one of the only black people. I definitely feel like I was the only black person like me coming from my background. Like I was a straight gangster coming out of that. Just my background was just different. And, but what I saw, they had teaching that I could, but what I saw was there are people here, they're my age and younger, that are really serious about the Lord. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like I want something real. Like I'm tired of this, the world, it was fake. I'd watched people get murdered. I'd sold a lot of drugs. I'd gotten higher than I ever thought I could get. I had done all these things. I felt the consequences of it. I saw the hood not even care that I got locked up. I saw all this happen, and I just wanted something real. And here, even though these was a group of people who could not relate to me, I didn't have anything identifying markers that I could latch on to, except you believe in Jesus and now so do I. And so I was impressed by their authenticity. It was a way different authenticity than the world. So I started to attend this church. It's called Covenant Life Church in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And I went there for 7 years. And then I was asked to go to the pastor's college, which they had and then I did that. And then I came out of that and became a pastor at the church that I'm at now. I've been at my church for 16 years, and I've been the lead pastor there for 10 years. But in the part of the training on being on staff, I became an intern there. They asked me to lead the prison ministry. And I was a likely candidate, of course, and I was actually glad to do it. And sometimes you're like, man, I ain't doing no prison ministry. That's like but I said, they asked me to do prison ministry. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm the man equipped for this. So there was a new prison that had opened up in Clarksburg, Maryland. It was a holding facility. I think you could only be there for 18 months. And I would go there every Wednesday. I remember the first thing I taught through was the book of James. That was my first teaching series, I think, ever. I didn't even know what I was doing. But I would just go there with a group of guys from this church, and we would go into this auditorium, and which I was familiar with how it looked. I'd been locked up. And there was a bunch of guys would come out and talk to me. And there was this one guy there that I could tell, like they call it game recognizes game, right? I could tell this was a dude that was a real dude. He just carried himself differently. His name was Rodney. And over the course of, I think I was there for a year, almost every Wednesday, almost. There were some Wednesdays I missed. But over the course of that time, I just befriended Rodney. And I'll never forget, on his last Wednesday night there, he came up to me, And he said, he called me Big Kurt, but he was way bigger than me. Rodney was like 6'3", 325, but he called me Big Kurt. But his Big Kurt to me was more a term of endearment because to him, I was the big homie who understood the Bible. And he said to me, he said, you know what, Big Kurt? He said, you probably don't, he said, I'm from Murder, Inc. And Murder, Inc. was a criminal organization in Washington, D.C. that was under Rayful Edmonds, the most notorious drug dealer in the history of Washington, D.C. And Murder, Inc. was essentially his assassination squad. And Rodney led that squad. And he said to me, he said, I just want to thank you. He said, because he said, I'm about to go. They're about to transfer me out of here. So this is my last time seeing you. But you've helped me understand and believe in Jesus. And I'm a Christian. And he said, you know, they may give me the death penalty. And he said, but, you know, thank you, man. Like, I'm a believer in Jesus. He said, I'm guilty. I'm not going to try to fight it. He said, I don't care what happens because I know that when I die, I'm going to believe I'm going to heaven because I believe in Jesus. It was authentic. It was genuine. Now, Murder, Inc. killed a lot of people. A lot of people. They killed rival drug dealers, if people who may snitch on them, anything. They would kill people. They were an evil, satanic organization. And Rodney was one of the leaders in it. And he basically said, I'm guilty. I'm not fighting because I believe in Jesus. And he was attributing to me his growth in the Lord. I was humbled by that because I thought I was a gangster, but standing before me was literally the dude, one of the most feared dudes in the Washington, D.C. area was this guy. So he got transferred out. I didn't hear from him again. Didn't know what happened. I was sharing that with the guys the other night. And then today, one of my homies sent me this article, and it was about all of those guys, including Rodney. And here's the article. It says, D.C. gang members convicted in killings. This article is written January 9th, 2003. All right? This is when it was written. When I saw Rodney, when I was around Rodney, that would have been 2005. All right? So he had been convicted, but he didn't know what they were going to sentence him to. And here's what it says about him. It's talking about a federal jury yesterday convicted 6 members of a drug gang that authorities dubbed Murder, Inc., including the group's leader, who was found guilty of the most murder counts ever tied to a D.C. defendant. And it goes down to talk about Kevin Gray, which like if you're from the D.C. area, you've heard of all of these guys. Like they were just notorious. And it talks about that. And then in this paragraph right here, it says this. Gray, 31, could face the death penalty after a jury convicted him of carrying out the killings as part of a continuing criminal enterprise. The panel acquitted him of charges in 3 other slayings. Another alleged gang leader, Rodney L. Moore, my Rodney, also could face execution. The jury convicted Moore, 37, of 10 killings and acquitted him of 2 others. Although D.C. law does not provide for the death penalty, federal law, because D.C. is not a state, when you catch a charge in D.C., it's automatically federal because D.C. is not a state, so it's federal jurisdiction. So it said the last execution in the district was in 1957. Prosecutors described Moore as the driving intellect behind the group and Gray as the gunpowder. The government's witnesses said the killing started in 1988 and continued through 1999 in a business that started as a trickle of heroin and grew into massive amounts of heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. The group began in the 2700 block of Robinson Street Southeast and later moved to 8th Street Northeast. I just drove by 8th Street just the other day. I was in the city. Just drove right past it, right through there. As its trade evolved from drug sales to murder for hire prosecutors. I'm not going to read the whole thing. The point that I wanted to bring to you and why I was just affected to make this video, because talking to my friends 2 nights ago, and then my man sending me this article, reminded me of the last conversation I had with Rodney. It was 2 years after this article was written. He had been convicted, but he hadn't been sentenced yet. They were getting ready to transfer him to a federal prison. And he had basically said, I'm guilty. And he said, but I believe in Jesus. And he was genuine. I believed him. He wasn't saying it. He wasn't delusional. You could tell like he was genuine. And I thought, man, I was broken because of God. The Lord would save a man like him, a guy that society, most people would never think is redeemable. You know, the society does not have any kindness towards those who commit certain crimes. And so you would have never thought he was redeemable. And it brought to mind, like, it reminded me of like another buddy of mine in New Orleans who had some murders and became a Christian. And I remember one day, it was kind of wild because this is how you think when you live that life and you've been one day he said to me, hey Kurt, he said, man, you know what? I was reading the Bible this morning and he said, guess what? Like Moses killed a man too and God still used him. And he said it with genuine, like that was genuine reasoning. He was like, hey, look, because he had killed him. He killed some people. He said Moses killed a man and God used him. And to this day, as far as I know, he's still a believer. In fact, 2 of his sons got drafted. Got scholarships. They played for LSU. One of them, I think, I need to check in with him. I think one of his sons plays for LSU, plays in the secondary LSU. For real. So it made me think about this article. Reading it made me remember Rodney more intimately, and then remember the life that I was in, that I wanted to be in that life, and it was so evil and so dangerous and so dark. And now here I am, a pastor, quasi YouTuber. I have a good life. I enjoy. There's some challenges in life, sure, but for the most part, like the Lord has been kind to me. And you know what? I don't know if Rodney got the death penalty or not, but if he persevered in his faith to believe in Jesus, then the Lord was kind to him too. A crazy, beautiful story of redemption through murder, crack, prison, and all of it. It's crazy. And when you think about like the Apostle Paul, God saved him. He was a murderer. He said Paul was a murderer. And that humbled him for the rest of his life. As he redeemed, he understood. And so this is partly why I don't get rattled that much when people say crazy stuff, because I've been shot at point blank range. I'm not really tripping off like people being offended at the fact that I make a video about Caitlin Clark or whatever. I don't really care. What I care about, though, what I always care about, is just stories of redemption, and that Jesus saving people like myself, like a Rodney, like you, even if you're a believer, who just don't deserve it. We just don't deserve it. So nothing flashy, nothing clever, nothing witty. I just wanted to share this because it just reminded me of just a powerful story of redemption. Like God really is a God of redemption. And I'm grateful to be one of those that at least right now is proven to be the redeemed. So thanks for watching. This video is not going to get a lot of likes, a lot of views, but I don't care. But hopefully if someone may watch this, you may be in a dark place. You may think you're irredeemable or unredeemable, whatever. You're not. You're not. The Lord saved Moses, who killed an Egyptian, saved Paul, who killed believers, saved me, street dude, drug dude, shot at people, shot back, saved Rodney, a cold killer. You're not beyond saving, no matter what you're into. But you have to do the one thing that all of us have in common, Moses, Paul, Rodney, me, is that we came to the Lord. We came to the Lord and we just said, look, there's no other way. We weren't worried about all the questions Don't let your questions about the Bible, I don't know about this one, but don't let those things stop you. You know, the Bible is the only religion where the God of the religion becomes like the people, becomes human beings, and says, I'm going to obey my own rules because they can't do it to my satisfaction. I'm going to live perfectly, and then I'm going to die brutally, and I'm going to let them, just by believing in me, escape the wrath to come, because there is punishment for giving in for the darkness that I pursued and lived in. You won't find, you may not have to agree with it. You may think you don't believe it, that's fine, but you will never find a better salvation than that. You will never find the God of anything else that says, I'm going to become like the people so that they don't receive the punishment. I'm going to punish myself. That's a crazy story. And so Moses, Paul, Rodney, and me, we just believed it. And here we are. Because you're not too far away. But you gotta go through Jesus, though. It's the only way. Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Like and subscribe if you want to. If not, I get it. I'm sure I'll have more Caitlin Clark videos, but every once in a while, this is the kind of video I want to do. Grace and peace.